hope that we'll see it. I don't know. The bar for us to get to see it, however, is that Joe Biden says, it was very generous. It's private, and it will remain so until he has a chance to speak with the former president, which Jen Psaki said, I wouldn't take it as an indication of a pending call. So I guess we're going to maybe never find out what very generous means, or maybe it was just that Joe Biden was being very generous, which seem I'm going to give the former president. I can't believe I'm going to do this. Going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he did have a moment of clarity, and history got a hold of him, and hopefully someday we'll get to see what it was. But good on him as he exits in that vein. Now today, the president rolled out 10 executive orders on how we're going to combat the coronavirus. He said, "Look, we're probably gonna hit 500,000 next month." 500,000 people dying next month. He says that, we didn't get into this mess overnight. It's not going to get out of it overnight. It's going to take months to turn things around. But he was very, very focused, very, very, as a matter of fact, kind of the let me be clear. We're going to get through it. We're going to defeat this. Help is on the way. Now, he did take shots at the Trump administration because, to be honest, they did booger this up pretty badly. And even with the big Operation Warp Speed, we're not getting shots into people's arms as quickly as possible because they didn't do some of the simple things that I thought you would have to do to get us moving in a direction that would, help us do what we need to do. Right? Get it out. Today signed the executive order to use the Defense Production Act to ramp up production and get more of what we need out into the country. I cannot believe that didn't happen under Trump. I mean, really, this is one of those things where he gets to wield some power and everybody would go, yay. This is one of those things that kind of was a no-brainer. But he did that. He also signed an executive order that would, move the federal government into action much quicker. Kind of this, get moving. You have the federal government move and focus on some coordination. So we're gonna set that up. We're going to move to get more testing sites in place because evidently we still have done a poor job of doing that. We've done a poor job of getting testing sites up, so we're gonna work on that, which again I think should have been happening, back in March. We're going to set up some centers. We're going to focus on distribution. That was another one. Setting up a centralized way to get things distributed. The mask, a big thing. Masks in federal buildings. And he called on, say, look, for the next 99 days, mask up. And that makes sense. Going to use federal workers to get shots in people's arms. Something that I've been saying I can't believe we didn't do before. I would say mobilize the National Guard. Anybody who can hold a rifle should be able to hold a needle. It's not hard. I've given people shots before. It's not really difficult. It's kind of like stick and push. Not hard. We can do this. But also, people traveling, we're going to put some restrictions on that, on planes, trains, and automobiles. Require people to wear masks while doing that. People coming to the country, we're going to test. All kinds of things that we need to be doing and need to be doing fast. The big part for me, increasing the testing. This is a massive departure from if we just stop testing, we won't have new cases. This is hey, we've got to get ahead of this. We've got to know who gets it. We got to know, because if we're going to go back to life as normal, you kind of got to know if people have it and how to trace it and how to put people aside. What we should have been doing from the beginning. And look, I have all these Trump folks going, well, all those Democratic governors and all those people, they just shut things down. Yeah, because they didn't want it to spread. The best way to have stopped the spread, and I was talking about this for months, is to do what the Pandemic for Dummies book says. Mask, stay away from each other, wash your hands, and test. The more testing you can do, the more you find people who have it, the more you seclude them from the rest of us, and the way you trace down the people that they were with, and you do that there. You don't just go, well, go ahead. Sorry, it's just bad policy. So I'm glad to see that President Biden has come out and said, look, we're moving in that direction to get stuff done. We're moving in that direction to urgently move forward and get the stuff into people's arms and move forward to get all of the testing done. For me, bringing in I guess the one executive order was thousands of federal workers to staff these new sites, these vaccination centers. Because I've talked with doctors and they've said, look, we just long lines in Florida. You shouldn't have lines of old people waiting to get shots. It just shouldn't happen. So I'm excited about this. I think there's an opportunity to do it. And as I said, we finally used the Defense Production Act, which all of this stuff should have been done. We could have been beyond this. We could have been moving. Now, all we heard from the right today, all we heard from the chirpers in the GOP was, well, you're using executive order. And look, I don't want to hear anyone talk about executive orders anymore. Trump did, basically ruled by fiat. We've got a real emergency that is one of these things that you need to have immediate action. So I'm going to give Biden a break on this. Now, I don't think we should be pushing legislation and slashing and burning things that have been long-standing. But in the middle of a global pandemic, in the middle of the situation that we're in, while it's raging and our numbers are spiking and it's getting worse and it's mutating, as Dr. Fauci said today, I'm gonna cut him some latitude. I'm gonna cut him some slack because we absolutely need it. Now, some good news today. We're moving towards getting a cabinet. Pete Buttigieg, for Secretary of Transportation, had his hearing. Evidently, it was a master's class on how to go through a confirmation hearing. He did that. We'll see. Everyone's saying, "Oh, this is him being, front runner for president in 2024." How about we get through 2021 first? I'm so tired of hearing people say, "Oh no, this is no." Let's get through the next couple of days first. Let's whip this virus. Let's get the economy moving, and then we can start talking about well down the road. But I guess Buttigieg did well. He will probably. Everyone seems to agree. He will slide through the confirmation process and be the next Secretary of Transportation. I have high hopes for him. We'll see. Also, you had the waiver that was quickly approved by Congress so that we could have a defense secretary, which you kind of need, especially while the Russians are still doing all kinds of nasty. And as part of all kinds of nasty, you've now got Congress going, hey, maybe we should be looking into this, and the Biden administration saying maybe just a thought, and this is one of those maybe just a thought kind of things. Maybe we should be looking into the hacking that went on. Maybe we should try and figure out how the Russians hacked into our stuff. Just kind of throwing that out there as an aside. And I'll be honest, I would kind of like to know. Because the White House did, order an intelligence review of what Russia did. Ranging from the SolarWinds hack to bounties on our troops. I think it's kind of important that we know that. So, day one, officially day one. Yesterday was kind of a ceremonial day, although lots of things got done. We'll go with day two. Day two post 45. Good stuff happened. Also, housing and urban development moved on helping people to stay in their homes, which I think is a great thing. This is one of the first actions by the administration to help people stay in their homes so that they don't get evicted, so that they don't have their or get foreclosed on. It's going to help them make their mortgages, keep the economy from cratering. Now, this is one of those moments where, as I've been reading some of the louder voices on the right, no one like McConnell has come out directly yet and said, of McConnell's stature, and said, I hope he fails and we're going to make him a one-term president and all of that. But you had Marjorie Taylor Greene, the cute congresswoman from Georgia, who today introduced articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. And you go, he hasn't even warmed the seat yet. And you're going to pursue what is a failed impeachment attempt. It's going nowhere. But what it is meant to do is, again, keep us divided, keep us pitted against one another, keep people riled up. And of course, as everything is motivated in our politics, raise her a ton of money. Because that's really what it's about. Same thing with Gun Queen Barbie. It's about the money. It's about, raising their profile, becoming the martyr, getting the attention. Hey, look at me. And by the way, send us money. I want to resist that. I want to resist at every possibility focusing too much attention on what the kooks are doing, because there's too much to be done. I said yesterday I was thrilled by the fact that Joe Biden moved on firing Peter Robb from the National Labor Relations Board. That to me sent a very clear message on the fact that he's not going to be like Democratic presidents of the past. He's going to actually try and get some stuff done. So I'm encouraged by the fact that we saw some really good things today. I'm encouraged by the fact that there is a clear policy agenda to move forward on. And maybe those wheels get chugging again. They've been dormant for a long time. So getting this administration, their cabinet in place, getting the leadership in place of all the different varied departments and agencies, that is going to take a bit of time. But if anyone can get this moving in that direction, I think it's Biden, and his experience and the relationships that he's had, I think are going to prove dividends. I've said before, I'll say it again, while not my number one choice, he is the right guy for the job. And he shows me that every time he speaks and every time that the administration does something. And I know it's only day two, but the fact is we've had 2 press briefings and no one has come back and been able to fact check a dishonest statement. That is a record for the last 4 years and 2 days. So, like I said, I'm really highly encouraged. There are good things that can happen. And we can, and I know there are people, we need to focus on unity, especially the people on the right. We can become more united by actually having a functional government run by people who believe that government can do something. I think that's the important part to me, that there are people who believe in the power of the institutions that they're in charge of. They believe that government can do what we need them to do, when we need them to do it, and how to do it. Bringing expertise back. And I think Anthony Fauci hit it. He was like a freeing. Oh my gosh, I'm free. I can say I don't know. And it's okay, because those are kind of words to live by during a global pandemic. I don't know. Let's find out. Seems to be, honestly, something you want from somebody during this moment. So I'm expecting the Fauci bit to be a Saturday Night Live clip, but still refreshing and really hopeful to move us forward and out of this mess. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, John Murphy from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters is going to be here. Right back.
Boycott of all Shell products. They also successfully enlisted the support of environmental organizations by stressing toxic chemical exposure and hazards faced by workers and the public alike. Picket lines were solid and thousands honored the boycott. Sales for Shell fell by 25%. After 4 months, the strike fund was nearly drained. Shell exploited internal divisions among members at a Texas plant and negotiated a separate settlement. What health and safety language Shell did agree to was non-binding. The union was broke, and the strike ended in compromise in early June. Despite this, as historian Robert Gordon notes, OCAW was able to gain strong health and safety language at all other oil companies for the first time, heightened public awareness of health hazards confronting millions of workers, and pressured OSHA into adopting stricter standards. Perhaps more importantly, the strike solidified the tentative Labor Environmental Alliance. Having merged with the United Steelworkers, the union continues to secure safe working conditions through contracts and alliances today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So as I said yesterday, I am thrilled by the fact that Joe Biden moved on getting rid of Peter Robb. It's one of those things that, one of those signs for me that says that Biden's serious and going to move us in the right direction. And as we talked about yesterday, Peter Robb was the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, someone who had swung the power of the board way to the far extreme to corporate power. He was a management side attorney, one of the guys behind Reagan during the firing of the Patco workers. So I'm happy to see him see what it's like to be at the at-will end of employment. And here to share some thoughts on, the firing of Peter Robb and some good news coming out of today's session as Joe Biden is our president. I've asked John Murphy to come talk with us. John is the Teamsters International Vice President at Large. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Good evening, Rick. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
I appreciate you taking time for us. So let me get your thoughts straight out of the box. Was Robb a good firing? Was that the right thing to do?
Absolutely. We've had some pretty bad general counsels over the last 40 years, but he's probably the worst ever in terms of oppressing workers' ability to form unions, stifling union organizing drives by allowing employers to deliberately violate the law. And he should have known when Joe Biden asked him to resign what would happen if he didn't. So he was trying to make a political point. This is a position that's appointed by the President of the United States. And he clearly had major ideological differences than Joe Biden on the role of labor and workers in this country. And he chose to ignore it to force the president's hand. So good job, Joe.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, but for me, this is that message sender, because labor and workers have heard from presidents of the past, from Jimmy Carter to Bill Clinton to Barack Obama, that things were going to happen and things were going to get better for workers and for labor specifically, only to have those hopes dashed in one way or another. So by this sends a message to me that maybe Biden is actually going to follow through on the rhetoric of the campaign. I think we lost John.
I showed a number of times when he was vice president. He
Yeah, I think we lost him. You there, John?
Oh, geez. Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
Can you
Well,
hear me?
it's, you gotta love the internet of the day. One of the things that I did want to get to, while I'm thrilled by the fact that Rob is gone, and I'm thrilled by the fact that maybe we're going to have an administration that's going to do the things that we need them to do to revive workers' ability to collectively bargain for better wages, hours, conditions. I'm thrilled that in Congress, we are seeing some action there as well. And I look at today's introduction of the Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act by House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal. Tell me what this is and why you think it's important.
Well, this is a vital bill that will save more than 300 union pension plans across this country. It has evolved from the Bush-Lewis Act, which Richie Neal filed on his first day as chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee in January of 2019. This bill covers more plans. What it does, and is basically, it takes all of the troubled plans in the United States. It takes enough of their liabilities that the plans don't have the money to pay for and cuts them out and puts them over into the PBGC. These liabilities are actually pension benefits. So it removes them from the plan, thereby puts them in a new trust fund at the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And the Treasury Department has to fund these severed liabilities, these pension benefits, at 100%, every penny on the dollar. So the retirees who get severed from the pension plan have their pension benefits fully guaranteed. They don't have to be worried about what's going to happen to my pension fund.
Right.
And the remaining money in the pension fund covers the current workers. So when they retire, they'll get 100% of their benefit. This whole concept was developed from the Bush-Lewis Act. It is a huge boon to retirees, senior citizens, and union workers everywhere. And the fact that it covers more plans than the Bush-Lewis Act means that more workers won't have to worry about their retirement security.
No,
it also, okay, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's important. And I wanted to highlight something that you said there for folks who don't know, because when someone ends up getting their pension slashed and they end up having to get funds from the PBGC, it's usually at like 40% of what you were expecting. So the fact that you're saying in this piece of legislation, the workers would be protected at 100% of what they were expecting so that their pensions are guaranteed, I think that is a major step forward.
Yes, and the insurance program that the PBGC maintains, which pays what I call minimum benefits. This bill would also dramatically increase that insurance pool program, and that really would only be necessary for plans, and I can't imagine 40 years from now that might fall into trouble, but I can't imagine that would be the case. By removing all that liability off all the endangered, critical and declining plans, the union pension system is saved. And all the government is doing is fulfilling the promise and the policy that the federal government adopted in 1974 when it passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And that the part of that bill made it federal law that the government saw it in the public interest to protect pensions of workers in this country, and also had a provision that said retirees, no matter what happened to their pension fund, their benefits could not be cut. And as you know, Rick, about 5 years ago, a law was passed that allowed pension funds that were in trouble to cut retiree benefits. This new bill would repeal that law, so thereby removing another source of stress to senior citizens, retirees across this country.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, when you're talking about these folks, these are the people who we're now calling heroes. These were the grocery workers. These were the truck drivers. These are the food processing workers. These are the people who work in warehouses. These are the people who spent their lives busting their butt, providing services for us, making profits for companies. And now here at the end, their retirement security is in peril. So for me, just the simple gut reaction is, if we can bail out Jamie Dimon and the big bankers, if we can bail out corporate America with unmarked checks, we can help these folks right now who need it the most.
That's right, and your listeners should keep in mind that pension benefits, when they're given to retirees, they are taxed. So the government, if it doesn't do anything, loses all these tax dollars and loses the economic activity from the spending that comes out of retirement checks. And as you know, Rick, retirees, no matter in what communities they live in, they spend their money on groceries, maybe going to some movies, buying gasoline for their cars. So it goes right back into the economy. So if you take the billions of dollars that retirees receive from pensions that they work for out of the economy, the government is hurt. So it's in the economic interest of the federal government to protect retirees' pensions.
No, I'm right there with you. But, for me, the bigger part of this is, if we can bail out bankers and we can bail out these big corporations, we can help these folks, and not with charity, but with smart policy. Now, let me flip this to the other side, though, John, because you're going to have those who are saying, hey, you guys set up your pension funds. It's not our fault that they're failing. Screw those people. That's the free market. You get what you get, and that's how it is. How do you respond to the people who say, look, it went belly up. Your scheme didn't work. Suffer the consequences.
Well, what I say, and I've been confronted with that argument before. All of these retirees are American citizens. They worked hard. They raised their kids. They paid their taxes. Their pension funds are in trouble by a number of factors. Okay, the decline of the labor movement because of anti-union laws, bad NLRB decisions, horrible court decisions, and the casino mentality of Wall Street, which allowed the growth of the subprime mortgage scheme, which essentially created a house of cards that people got rich off. Mostly the Wall Street banks got rich off, and drained the assets of the pension funds because of the declining active union membership, as labor has been oppressed over the last 50 years, forcing the union pension funds to go into things like the stock market to try to make up the funding shortfalls. So the retirees did nothing to deserve this fate. And as I'm sure you're well aware, Rick, Wall Street has not been held accountable for how they caused the 2008 collapse of the economy. This is the last vestige of the damage they did. This country owes these American citizens what was promised to them and what is the public policy established by the United States government under ERISA to protect retirees' pensions. The people that say this, oh, it's too bad about them, the next breath they're going to be saying, well, cutting Social Security benefits is probably a good idea. but don't raise our taxes. So cut the retirees. This country has to come to terms with how we treat our senior citizens. We cannot allow good American people, middle-class people who've worked hard, to have their living standard cut because corporations, greedy Wall Street banks want to increase their profit margins.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you, and the messaging is very clear in my view. If we can bail them out, we can most certainly help folks who need it the most like this. But what would you say to to someone who then goes, John, hey, I didn't have a pension. Who's going to bail me out? Because I hear this quite often. I hear people saying, well, it's sad about them, but I didn't get anything. So what about me? How do you respond to that?
Well, besides the obvious question about this is part of a union benefit, many workers today have some kind of a retirement plan because of corporations' desire to keep unions away. So it forced them into some kind of retirement plan, whether it's a defined benefit plan, a defined contribution plan. But to those people directly, if someone allows these pension plans to collapse, it's a pretty easy step toward cutting Social Security benefits.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. So just to kind of bring this back around, because at the end of the day, we don't want anyone to lose their pensions. We want to make sure that people who were given promises are able to get that. They're able to have the security they need, and also to be able to put money into our local economy, because that's a big part of this as well. The question now is, how do we get this moved forward? Because this is not a new issue. This is something that I remember being talked about, probably 7, 8, 9 years ago. We've been talking about how to help these pension funds from going belly up for some time. How in this moment how do we move forward and get this pushed through?
Well, I mean, your listeners in Pennsylvania can start calling Pat Toomey, the Republican senator, who, by the way, refused to support the Butch-Lewis Act when it was in the Senate last year. And there are one major Teamster plan in Pennsylvania, the Western Pennsylvania Teamsters Pension Plan, that's in serious trouble. They've already had to cut their benefits under that law that was passed in 2015. Those benefit cuts probably won't save that plan. So those retirees are facing even more dire circumstances. Tell them to call Senator Pat Toomey. This bill will pass the House again because the Democrats still control. Over in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, even though he's no longer majority leader, he can block this bill from being voted on by its merits because of the Senate rules, which requires 60 senators to vote to stop debate and vote on the merits.
Right. So this is why, in my view, this is why we need to do away with the filibuster. Let's get these policies pushed through. So the marching order tomorrow morning, everybody pick up the phone, call your senators, call them early, call them often, say that we need to move forward on this piece of legislation and help our retirees make sure that they live the dignified life they need. Again, it's the Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act, put forth by Richard Neal, the Democrat from Massachusetts. John, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick.
Good stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2000. Just after midnight, 600 police officers clashed with picketing longshoremen in Charleston, South Carolina. The port in Charleston ranked the 4th largest in the United States. While South Carolina is one of the states with the lowest union membership, the port is an exception. The picketers were predominantly African Americans. They were represented by the International Longshoremen's Association, Local 1422 and 1771. That January, a Danish company, Nordana, announced they would unload their ships with non-union labor. The company had used union labor for more than 2 decades. 600 police were on hand to watch over 20 scabs brought in to unload the ships. The police force included helicopters and armored personnel vehicles. The longshoremen held a meeting to discuss their response. A picket of longshoremen was set up at the port. The police violently opposed the picket. They hurled gas grenades and racial epithets. They savagely beat Ken Riley, the president of Local 1422. 5 union members were arrested and charged with felony rioting and faced 5 years in prison despite a lack of evidence. And they were placed under house arrest for more than a year. They became known as the Charleston Five. The South Carolina Attorney General vowed to make an example of these workers. He promised jail, jail, and more jail, and even going as far as comparing them to terrorists. The labor movement in South Carolina and beyond rallied to their defense. Yellow bumper stickers and billboards reading "Free the Charleston Five" could be spotted throughout the state. A plan developed to conduct actions at ports across the world to support these men and their right to picket. Faced with an outpouring of support, South Carolina reduced the charges to a misdemeanor and a $100 fine.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, I see the firing of Peter Robb, the introduction of a piece of legislation that's going to help workers save their pension funds. And look, today also the president invoking the Defense Production Act to get vaccines available and out the door and into people's arms. I see these as all really good signs of us moving forward and ways of helping rebuild our economy and again move back to what my hope is for this president, that he's the guy who returns reward to work, that we rebuild that trust of if you work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. I think we're on the right path, and here to share some thoughts of yesterday's inauguration. And of, today's activities and where we see things going. Tomorrow I've asked our good friend Phil Glover to come talk with us. Phil is the National Vice President of District 3 of the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE. Phil, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, first, I want to thank you for letting me on, Rick, and asking me to come on and talk about the administration and what's happening with federal workers.
So
pretty happy.
Are you encouraged by what you've seen so far? I mean, I know it's only we're 36 hours in. Encouraged by the first 36 hours?
Certainly, we're happy to see some of the changes already. The tone of the administration towards federal workers has already changed. They've already put out several executive orders, and I know they look like they're on COVID and they're on health and safety of employees and all those things. But what people don't know is at the top of those executive orders in the first sections, it says, you must work with your union. And we haven't seen that before January 20th for 4 years. So that is a signal to AFGE and other federal unions that they have to work with us on these issues.
And the thing that gets me, Phil, is, and I was talking about this back, in April and May. I have some Teamster friends who represent, food processing workers out in Washington State. And they told the story of how they were able to keep their workers safe by being very proactive and working with the company to, institute a whole bunch of policies that actually kept their workforce safe. As we're 15 miles down the road, the Tyson plant was, just decimated with, hundreds of cases of coronavirus and multiple deaths. By working with the union and partnering to negotiate and figure out how to do things better, these people were able to save lives, as where you didn't have that ability to negotiate and work together. they didn't.
Well, yeah, and we've had well over 70, I believe we have over 70 deaths in the federal workforce of people that died of COVID. Just here in District 3, on December 22nd, we had a food inspector. Actually, you just brought up meat plants. We had a Southwestern PA food inspector who passed away December 22nd of COVID and got it in a processing plant. They were not taking precautions there, and she ended up with it and passed away. We just had a VA, our executive vice president out of our VA in Pittsburgh, passed away of COVID just Monday. And he was on a ventilator for a couple of weeks. They got him off of it, but he wasn't able to make it. So we're very sorry for those deaths in the federal workforce.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, it's still no joke, and we need to mobilize. And I'm glad to see the president has come out and said we're going to use more federal workers to do this. The Defense Production Act to get more vaccine and get them out the door quicker, set up more testing sites and staffing those with federal employees and the National Guard if we have to. Because to me, it's this kind of mobilizing that we need. And look, we finally got a president who's thinking in those terms and brought in smart people to do it. So I'm grateful. But, one of the reasons I brought you on the talk today is, this idea of, we're here. Thank goodness we're here. And what it took for us to get here. And a big part of it, I look at what happened in Georgia and the mobilizing and the organizing that went on down there and the work that Stacey Abrams and her group had done. I'm curious to get some of your insight.
Well, many of our unions have fallen into the idea of a fee for service. You give me money and the union protects you and your job. And we really don't connect that back to that this is your union and you are part of it. What I watched with Stacey Abrams is they really got back into door-to-door registration and door-to-door get out the vote efforts. And I know that was tough with COVID this year. Pennsylvania, our Labor 2020 program is usually really good, but we weren't on the doors as much this year. We were doing more phone calling and more virtual stuff. But we need to find a way to capture that lightning in a bottle that she found in Georgia, because, you figure where she was in the governor's race and where she is now and where Georgia is now is just unbelievable.
No, I'm right there with you. But again, it comes back to this, this idea of old school organizing. And you and I think we both agree that we've, as a labor movement, have kind of lost that old school mentality. I talk about it often because I'm reminded of an interview that Ralph Reed did, the guy who was one of the co-founders of the Christian Coalition, and he was asked, how did you build, this powerful evangelical movement? And he pulled out the SWOC handbook, the Steelworkers Organizing Handbook, and said, basically this is old school labor organizing. So all of these different groups are taking what the labor movement, was built on and what did, and they've used it in various ways. How do we get that back?
Well, I think we have to get back to our roots of labor and how labor did things. I mean, you can go back to the 30s. My grandfather was a miner in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. They would go on strike, and they would have, I think the largest strike in Uniontown with all the mines was, 5,000 people out on the street, something like that back in those days. And they didn't have social media, and they'd have Twitter. They did that one-on-one, knocking on doors, meeting in bars, all those kind of things. And at the mines, coming in and out of shift. Hey, we're going out. See you on Thursday down on the street. We really have to get back to that. We've done a lot of study in AFG about this. In 2017, we had Jane McAlevey, who you may know of, I don't know, but she's a union organizer out of 1199 SEIU Northeast, and she wrote a book called No Shortcuts. So we took a look at that. My district did some pilots trying to use that system. We actually did training for most of my district. Unfortunately, it was in November of 2019, and coming into 2020, of course, by March, we shut down. So we are going to try and resurrect that as soon as we can get back to one-on-one communications with our members.
No, and that's I think that's a model that a lot of unions are trying to resurrect. And I think it's going to be good for, for not just for union workers, but for all workers. Because one of the things that I try and remind people is, when you have a strong labor movement, when you have strong union density, there's a ripple effect across the economy. When we had 35% of the workforce unionized, you had an equal 35% of the workforce earning similar wages and having similar conditions, so that the standard of living was rising for everyone. We need to get back to that, because right now in the private sector, you're just over 6% of the workforce that's unionized, well off the pace of 35%.
Yeah, it's really scary where labor has ended up after all of these years. And we've had these fits of starts and stops to rebuild the labor movement. And I can remember when, John Sweeney was elected at the AFL-CIO. I was at that convention. And man, we were so excited. We thought labor was really going to be on the rise and come back. And you've just seen us, it's really been a struggle. Labor law has to change, maybe not change, but certainly what has happened with lawyers and union busting firms and, being able to have employee meetings and these things that they do needs to be stopped.
Right.
People should have a free choice on whether to join a union and not be told that their company is going to shut down the place and leave. If they do, that's part of it. In our organization, we're trying a couple different things this year. We started a digital advertising program. We had to because of COVID. I have 5 pilots within my district that will advertise on digital media. So when you activate your phone at a work site, we will have digital ads come up from AFG 3rd District trying to get them to connect and join their union. So it's something new we're giving a shot, and we have it where they can actually take a phone call. We have a phone number there. They can call, get hold of somebody, and talk about the union and joining the union. And that's the way we're trying it right now until, we get this COVID thing under control.
Right. But, here's the thing, and you'd mentioned a moment ago, the free choice. One of the reasons that labor was so behind Barack Obama in 2008 was because of the Employee Free Choice Act. And I like to remind people that the Employee Free Choice Act was something that George Miller and the Democrats actually thought that George W. Bush would sign. There was actually almost an opportunity to have that pushed through, except for thank you, Arlen Specter, for stopping it in the Senate. But this is one of those moments where it keeps coming back to the politics and why it's so important that we engage and have elected leaders who are labor friendly, but not just labor friendly, are actually going to come in and do what they say. I mean, I go back to Carter. There was talk during the Carter years of repealing Taft-Hartley. Bill Clinton came in. We were going to get a strike replacement bill. Barack Obama came in, said we were going to get the Employee Free Choice Act. We got none of that. Right now, there's talk of the PRO Act. I truly believe that Joe Biden's going to do everything he can to move that forward, but that's going to come down to every rank and file Democrat in Congress and in the Senate.
Well, and I think, fortunately, I do hope that members like Connor Lamb and Matt Cartwright will push those things. Brendan Boyle. I mean, we have some great labor congressmen and women in this state now. And I believe, like Susan Wild, I think they will push for these kind of things. I hope we can get them on the agenda. But here's the thing: we let Obama off the hook. I mean, let's look at our TSA workers. The Transportation Security Administration was brought up after 9/11. It was put into place, and it did not have the same union rights as other federal workers, Title V, because McCain and my friend Lieberman, who I was a delegate for, agreed that they didn't want to deal with the union thing right then. Let's just get this agency up and running. So they gave the agency head all the power to decide what could be negotiated, who could be in the union, all these things. It was just awful. And we have gone through now, Democratic Congresses, Democratic Senates now. We better see TSA get Title V rights this year, and we should be standing out there screaming if they don't. That's our bad. We didn't go. We were supposed to picket the White House at one point, and we were asked to go up and do a rally up in front of the AFL building instead of the White House, so we didn't embarrass a certain president. That's just can't be the way it is this time.
No, I'm right there with you. And this is the reason I bring this up is, look, I expect the Republican presidents to be hostile to labor and to not actually do something. But Democrats have gotten away with, taking working people for granted, which is why, and I don't know about your membership, the temperature of your membership, but as a Teamster, I see a lot of my brothers and sisters who have walked away from the Democratic Party, because and we're big Trump supporters, because Trump said, hey, we're going to fight for good trade deals, we're going to bring manufacturing back. He basically stole labor's message and fed it back to them, and they're saying, hey, but that's what my union's telling me. This is my guy. And this is where Democrats have to deliver. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, they have to get back to taking care of rank and file members. They have to look at labor issues as economic issues, and not fall into this idea that big business is going to take care of it or somebody else is going to take care of it. They have to get. I mean, I just saw. We have a lot of people that complain about AOC. She's standing on a picket line with the Teamsters today.
Yep.
She's up there bringing them food and water and things and attending a picket line. Biden has been on picket lines. I know that. Certainly Bernie Sanders and them have been on picket lines. We need more of these members. I know Connor Lamb's been out there. So we need more of these members out with labor and showing people that they are with labor. And I really hope, I think the selection's made by Biden to run the Labor Department. He's a card-carrying union member. We have Ernest Dubester was just named as the chair of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is our version of the NLRB. They just got rid of Rob at the NLRB. And actually, I heard they tried to put his deputy in, and she was given a letter. So my understanding is she's out the door too. So they are bringing labor people back into these places, and hopefully we can start to fix and repair things that have been done.
Yeah, because in my view is if we're going to unite the country, and I know there's a lot of talk of unity, I think the only way that you unite the country is not with words, but actually making people's lives better. And look, I'm a true believer in the idea that if we grow the power of workers to bargain for better wages, hours, conditions, we make people's lives better. All of the fringe, all of the heat, all of that stuff taps down, and we're able to then come back together. But only when there's opportunity, only when there's some bit of equality, and only when we have the ability to share in the fruits of our labor.
No, that's for sure. And I think I really believe that if they don't show progress on all of these, worker issues, the minimum wage, all these other things, that the healthcare, taxes, all of these things, and getting things under control. They need to be doing that all the time. And I hope what Chuck Schumer does in the Senate is put stuff up for votes. Let them vote. Let the Republicans vote against pure labor initiatives, and then see what our members out here think, because they haven't had that opportunity. McConnell would shield them from votes. The House would take a vote, but then the Senate didn't have to. And so it would shield them. And these guys go out and still talk like they're working for you, and that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, I get a kick out of hearing a Republican tell me how much they care about the average working guy. It's crazy. But look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of work to do. Over the next several weeks, I'd love to have you back and get your assessment on how this administration is doing, because it's my view we can't say, oh, our guy's in, it's time to go home. Now's the time, in my view, you put the pedal to the metal and you hold them accountable.
Yeah, you cannot allow this to happen. Obama, we were so darn happy to get rid of W.
Yep.
That we kind of said, okay, he's going to take care of things, and then that didn't happen. But I would mention one more thing. I think tomorrow, we're not sure, but we believe tomorrow, those executive orders that you had me on to talk about last year, we believe Biden will be rescinding those. We're hoping tomorrow. I think that's what's on his schedule.
Good stuff.
But very shortly.
Good
so
stuff.
We're pretty happy about that too.
Great. Phil, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Phil Glover, International Vice President there with AFGE District 3. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. U.S. steelworkers staged the greatest walkout in the history of the steel industry. Nearly 750,000 strikers shut down more than 1,200 steel plants in 30 states. In Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area alone saw nearly 250,000 steelworkers take to the picket line on strike. During World War II, workers in the steel industry had mostly gone without pay increases, as the focus of steel production was to support the war effort. During the war, labor disagreements built up. When the war ended, those disagreements resulted in a wave of strikes. Workers in the steel industry believed they were long overdue a pay increase. The steel companies did not agree and refused to bargain. One such example was at Inland Steel, headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. Inland workers had not received a raise in more than 4 years. After 4 years of frozen wages, they demanded a quarter an hour increase, but their demands fell on deaf ears. Similar stories were heard at steel plants throughout the nation. The great 1946 steel strikes forced the bosses back to the bargaining table and became part of the largest wave of strikes in United States history. All told, nearly 5,000 strikes took place that year, with some 4.6 million workers walking off the job. There was a backlash, however, against these strikes. In 1947, Congress considered 250 different labor-related bills. That year, 24 Democrats and nearly every Republican voted to override President Harry Truman's veto of the Taft-Hartley Act, which was specifically meant to curb union power. Taft-Hartley outlawed wildcat strikes. It also allowed states to pass right-to-work laws. 24 states now have right-to-work laws that severely curtail union organizing and the power of working people. At the time, President Truman denounced Taft-Hartley as a slave labor bill. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You can't poke into any issue in Congress without stumbling over sacks full of corporate campaign donations. And the recent eruption of pro-Trump mob violence inside the U.S. Capitol exposed boodles of that special interest cash to public view, much to the embarrassment of major Wall Street banks, Silicon Valley tech giants, and CEOs of brand-name corporations. Hundreds of thousands of their political dollars were traced to the mayhem in our capital. Specifically, their money was going into the coffers of 147 Republican lawmakers who backed the fraudulent Trumpster attempt to overthrow last fall's presidential election. Acknowledging the damage these revelations did to their public image, the corporate interests responded forcefully. How? They issued press releases condemning violence. Well, that'll make things better. Okay, in fairness, quite a few firms added a bit of bite to their bark by suggesting that maybe they wouldn't be so cavalier about tossing out political contributions in the future. Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, and Goldman Sachs announced that they would, quote, pause donations to all candidates. Other groups like Marriott said they were suspending donations, and others like FedEx said they were monitoring the situation. Notice the profusion of wiggle words in these professions of corporate principle. The executives are really not biting the system, but merely gumming it for a while. Then, once public attention has drifted, the corporate congressional complex will be back to business as usual. After all, while they deplore Trump's racism, sexism, xenophobia, and overall immorality, they've gleefully taken it all to the bank, rationalizing, legitimizing, and profiting from his corrupt presidency. This is Jim Hightower saying it's not armed rioters from outside the system who are the main threat to our democracy, but insiders who manipulate the system at our expense.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the entire world, collective sigh of relief yesterday as world leaders reached out to President Biden and expressed their great joy that he is the president. In fact, the South Korean president tweeted that America is back, which I thought very, very fitting, very fitting. But so much yesterday to get to, so much on the agenda. So fun today as well. I can't wait to talk to my good friend Sarah Burris. She's a reporter over at Raw Story, does some of the most important reporting of our day, and one of my favorite people in the media. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday. Happy second day of the Biden administration.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, like how they have the BC and the AD. You remember that? Like this is like kind of AT, 2 AT. Here we are.
Trump.
But the world collective sigh. In fact, a sigh ever released. In fact, one of the headlines was just like that. In congratulating Biden, world leaders expressed relief at Trump's departure because there was a thought that he might not.
I don't know if you noticed, but at the actual inauguration, there was a lot of wind. And I think that was the world actually collectively sighing together. It just created such a huge whirlwind of people. We're all just like, oh, thank you.
But equally weird, and I don't know if you saw this, but Donald Trump actually left a note for Joe Biden, and I didn't think he would do it. Now Biden has said it's very generous, and maybe someday we get to see it. Because I want to see what very generous means. But he left a note. I mean, that's pretty impressive, I think.
And I didn't think that he would either, because I created a fake one that I thought was hysterical. And then it turns out there was a real one that showed up, and it was like, oh, whoops. But yeah, I wonder if the reason he thinks that it was so charitable was because he actually left a note and nobody really expected him to. It's just like, oh, this is very generous, because he didn't, nobody expected him to actually leave one, or, and I don't know. I can't imagine he would say anything that would be that thoughtful,
right?
And in my fake letter, I was like, you have to flush the toilet in the office 10 or 15 times. So
jiggle the handle. Is that what you're gonna say?
Well, you know how he has to flush the toilet so many times.
Yeah. He needs a lot of water.
So, all right. And so I don't know. I wonder too what he said, and I wonder if he's just being thoughtful and gracious about it in the way that he speaks about it, so that I wonder if it's just a way of kind of brushing this all away, to not kind of create this continued animus going on in the country.
No, you're right, and that's what I said. I think this is Biden being very generous, because I gotta tell you, I think the note was 2 letters long, a big giant "FU" with his goofy signature. I think that's what it is. But hey, good riddance. Bye. Good luck whatever's next. Good luck in jail. But the fun now begins, because we still have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who today unfurled her articles of impeachment. And I guess my first thought is she goes through all of this conspiracy stuff about Hunter Biden and rehashes all of the Rudy Giuliani stuff. My thought is, should we tell her that was all kind of BS and everyone was kind of in on the fact that there's really nothing there, or should we just let her continue to look stupid?
I kind of feel like we should just let her keep looking stupid. Because at this point, I don't know if you've watched any of Jen Psaki's briefings yet, but they're just ridiculously normal. And so I feel like the only way we're really going to get our kicks anymore is by watching Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because Jen Psaki's not going to do anything stupid. And, she's not going to yell at anybody and say fake news. And I kept hoping that maybe just once she'd throw it out there just to mess with people. maybe on April Fool's Day.
Should dress up
but
like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and be really mean.
and also I really would love to have a reporter ask her, do you have a hair and makeup person? Do you have like a stylist back behind us in an office back there anywhere? Because they did, the Trump administration had their own hair and makeup people
Sure.
that did Kylie up before she would go out and do her little briefing. And so I wonder if somebody would ask her that just to, just for grins. But yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, bless her heart. That's a big bless your heart.
Yeah,
That's almost like a, oh, you poor child kind of a thing. That's the next level to bless your heart. She's just, I kind of was trolling her a little bit today because we got to about 2:30 and she hadn't, filed her articles of impeachment. And I was like, hey, Margie, 2:30.
Yeah, we're waiting.
Where you at?
Yeah, you're falling behind. Did you wake up late? Not set the alarm?
What's funny about it is it turns out she realized that they're a lot harder to do than she thought. There was a report that it did take her a lot longer than she anticipated. And I don't know if she just Googled like a Cliff Notes version of how to file impeachment.
Impeachment for dummies?
Right, or if she just took the Trump impeachment and then just like copy and pasted and then added in her own stuff. Because I still haven't seen the full document yet. I don't know how long it is. I don't know how detailed it is. I've seen her press release. I've seen her web video, but I can't see the text of the bill anywhere. And so I'm curious if this is really a thing, or maybe, this is something where, she said that she was going to submit it, and Kevin McCarthy was like, why don't you just bring it by my office? And then he was like, oh, thank you, Rip.
Yeah.
Trash.
I got a file for that.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how this is going to move forward, but I know for the next 2 years, we are going to enjoy every minute of this, and she's going to be such a great resource for fundraising for Democrats.
Yeah, her and Gun Fetish Barbie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm expecting that.
What's her name? I forget.
Lauren Boebert. If she doesn't get expelled, she's going to be a lot of fun. But here's the thing, and speaking of expelling, there are a number of Democratic senators who sent out a letter to the Ethics Committee, to Ethics Committee Chairman Chris Coons, looking for Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley to either be expelled or to be censured. Curious, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is the first step. I think it's a good step. I think that there should be a hearing. I think the hearing should be public because I think, one of the most important things from this whole thing, this whole insurrection attempt is we deserve a lot of transparency. We deserve to have the American people be able to watch and hear their answers to questions, tough questions, like, what were you thinking? And what does this raised fist that's like ginning up the crowd, what does that mean? The letter that they sent, it was pretty concise in the way that it talked about what they felt like he did. I keep saying he because Howley to me feels like, the real instigator. Ted Cruz kind of seems like the the plankton that's just following,
right?
The pilot fish who's just following the predator, and not really, I think Ted Cruz just seems like an opportunist who is trying to make something out of it, and but I'm curious to see where it goes. We'll see. I hope it actually happens.
Yeah, the 14th Amendment is very clear, though. It says no American who is engaged in insurrection or rebellion is allowed to hold office.
Well, and the Senate rules are very, very clear, too. I think the Senate rules are more stringent than even the 14th that requires you to have, honorable conduct. You can't even bring a gun on the Senate floor or the House floor, for that matter. But yeah, these are strict ethics rules, and with an ethics chairman who is now a Democrat, I have greater faith that this will, we'll actually have a legitimate hearing, and I just really hope that something happens, even if it's, if it's not expulsion, then at the very least, I think baseline, the guys need to be censured.
No, I'm right there. So there has to be a negative consequence in this for somebody. There really has to be. There has to be some bit of accountability. And I've been saying for a while, we can't get united. There's no way of coming back together unless we hold somebody accountable. And then there has to be that active contrition.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that's been so difficult to watch, is that all of these Republicans are kind of starting to treat it like business as usual. And that is coming up against, Joe Biden. It's really hard for me to say President Biden. Like, I just keep wanting to say Joe, because
he is Joe.
And he is such a Joe. He is President Joe. And, but it seems very much like this, he honest and truly wants to bring the country together, and America really seems to be behind it. And the Republicans don't want to play that way. And I wonder to what extent the White House will kind of take this approval rating that he's got out for a drive and see what it'll do. Because he's polling at 66% right now. That's astounding.
That is.
He won by 7 million votes, which to me is a total mandate. We won the House, we won the Senate, and he's got an approval of 66. We need to start pushing a slate of legislation. It needs to go through fast.
Nope. I'm right there with you. And look, I think, for me, the firing of Peter Robb yesterday was a decisive move. It was a good move. It made me go, I love this. It's a BFD, man.
It is a BFD. And, I think that we talk a lot about President Joe's, tendencies to be more moderate. A lot of people wanted to call him this big, huge liberal, but secretly most of us were like, yeah, no, we wish. But when it comes to labor issues, like, the guy was elected because of firefighters. I mean, they were the first union who really stood up and supported him in his very first campaign for the Senate. And that relationship to labor has been strong from that point forward. And if we can just get him to not be afraid of acting on his, loyalty to labor, and actually, not be afraid to work to bring about some legislation that actually helps us, then I think we got something.
No, I'm right there with you. And to highlight your point of the firefighters being the first union to endorse him, they actually did the endorsing at a Teamsters Hall out in Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, Biden he's got the support of unions across the country, because he's got a stellar voting record over his career, and that is showing. And I'm like I said, I'm thrilled to see some action, because I was a little worried. I was a little worried we were going to get another Obama, another Clinton, another Carter, where they talked a good game, made some promises, and then fell way short.
And I think that there will be some of those issues. I'm bracing for them.
Sure.
I don't think it's going to be around those issues. At least I hope not.
I'm with you there. Back to the press briefing. Fauci had a Saturday Night Live moment, which I thought was hysterical.
Oh, good.
And it
was amazing.
It was amazing. I got this Johnny Cochran vibe, though. If it don't fit, you must quit. If it don't replicate, you can't. It can't. What was it? I can't remember the word now.
So basically, he said, they asked him about Amazon, because Amazon has offered to help with distribution for the vaccine. The shot is apparently so easy to give, a monkey could do it. But right now, all we have are nurses doing it. And so Amazon offered this. And one of the reporters asked, do you think during the Trump administration, if they had agreed to work with Amazon, if there would have been a bigger and better rollout? Because at this point, you're getting about 500,000 shots in arms. What is it, a day, or is it a week? Is it a day? I think it's a day.
I think it's a day.
And his goal is, in the first 100 days, to have 100 million vaccinations. So it is a day. And the Trump administration had a much higher standard that they obviously couldn't meet. And I think with Biden, we're in a better place, and I think he could move a lot faster than even 1 million a day, but we'll see. I think they're playing it a little bit safe. Anyway, so they asked this question to Fauci, and Fauci's like, I don't know. It maybe could, maybe it couldn't, but I just don't know about that. I would just be throwing my arms up. And then he was like, it's funny, the different thing about this administration is you can say that you don't know something, and that's okay.
And that is okay. And like I said earlier, the one thing that I want you to say during a global pandemic is, I don't know, let's find out. But to the Johnny Cochran moment, viruses don't mutate unless they replicate. And I just got that kind of Johnny Cochran vibe. And I don't know why. It's just
the whole thing. This is I felt so much better about the world. I've been nervous because I've had the sniffles a little bit, and I flew not too long ago. I was like, oh my God, I have the Rona. So I got one of those oxygen testers and stuff. And so I had it on my finger when the briefing was started and Fauci was talking, and I looked over and my heart fluttered and got faster. It was like, oh, I love the Fauci. It's biological.
That is a good thing. And then let's go to the story that I saw right after this. Evidently, you've got a representative from Maryland, a guy named Andy Harris, who decided he was going to try and bring a gun into the House chambers. What is it with these lunatics who want to bring guns into the House chamber? Now, Lauren Boebert, my gun Nazi Barbie, she tweeted out that she was sad that she didn't have her gun so that she could shoot the people who were, she said today 1776, which is weird to me why you would rile them up only to want to then shoot them. But that's kind of the vibe I got from that. What is it with these fetishists that they have to carry their guns with them everywhere?
I don't get it. It never has made any sense to me. And I think with Lauren in particular, I guess if you're not from Washington and you hear all these stories about violence and crime and whatever, maybe they think that they need it for protection. I don't get it, but they can have their guns in their office. They can have their guns in their cars. They cannot take their guns into the Congress, and they cannot take it on the floor. And that's what happened with Mr. Biggs today. And Pelosi actually set a rule that, and she said this before Biggs went through, that they were going to start fining people if they brought their guns through. And I thought that it was a $25,000 fine. Bob told me that the first offense is only $5,000. So I was really excited the dude was going to get fined $25,000. But hey, next time it's going to be good. It's a big old check he's going to have to write.
Yeah, we got a lot of people who need some help, and if we can redistribute wealth from gun fetish Barbie and from this guy to people who need to pay their bills and stay in their homes, however we got to do it, yeah. I guess is a good way to go. Let's talk a little bit about the inauguration. It was a great day. I thought Biden gave a really good speech, but it was Bernie Sanders who stole the show. Curmudgeon-y Bernie Sanders with his mittens and his coat and all huddled up in his Vermont wear. That was the meme of the whole thing.
Oh, it was so funny. And I agree. The Biden speech was really beautiful. The speech was very Biden. It's not this big, flowery, momentous kind of syntax and language that Obama does. It was who Biden is, and it is that authenticity that I think people connect to. And so when he can deliver a speech that delivers the authenticity, I think that's when he does the best.
Right.
And he crushed it. And behind him was Bernie Sanders in a big old coat and what looked like mail he needed to drop off at the post office. And he just did the stop off at the inauguration. I gotta be somewhere, you guys. I gotta run to the Trader Joe's up here. So I think one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of people were writing stories about, like fashion reviews about Michelle Obama, and how the one that really hacked me off was like, the woman behind, or the power of her belt or something like that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that the woman behind the belt is actually the power, but that's just me.
Yeah.
And the giant dove on Lady Gaga's shoulder that everybody thought was the Mockingjay. And, there were some interesting things. So I got a little weird last night. I was tired, and I wrote my own fashion review for Bernie Sanders, and I've always wanted to do this because the stupid fashion reviews basically take something so innocuous and then they just explode it into this big, huge deal, and so I did that. I took Bernie's mittens and made it into a story about the country coming together and the world community and the warmth and love and compassion of us all, because he wasn't wearing gloves. He wasn't separating his fingers with gloves. They were mittens, folks. He brought his fingers together, which is what we're trying to do with the country.
So we no longer give each other the middle finger. I'm with you. Bringing the fingers together. That is a great message, and thank you for Bernie for bringing that to us.
Exactly. And for, I think it's Jenna Ellis who makes them. She's actually a teacher in Vermont. She doesn't do the mittens professionally, and her email box is full because people want more mittens, which I think is so precious. But I love her for doing it, and salute to her.
Yeah, absolutely. I've only owned one pair of mittens, and it was an ex-girlfriend from high school's mother who made them. And I had one mitten. The other one was they were joined together so you could hold hands and have mittens on, which I thought, now that I think back on it, was it was corny then, but kind of sweet now.
That is sort of sweet.
Aw.
I think mittens are great. I especially like the mittens where the top part is kind of cut so you can fold it over. And you don't have to take your whole mitten off. You can just fold down the thing, and then you have access to your fingers, because that's really helpful for if you're going to type outside in the snow for whatever reason.
I mean, for me, when I read your piece and I saw the memes going around, my favorite one being Bernie sitting on the chair on top of Mike Pence's head like the fly.
Yes,
I thought that was brilliant.
Mine too.
Brilliant.
That was so good.
But my first thought was, is this Bernie now going, screw it, I'm going back to being me, not combing my hair, wrinkled suits. That was my thought. Because the last couple of years while running for president, someone combed his hair, someone straightened him up, ironed his suit, put on some nicer clothes, and now he's somewhat polished. As where the last time I met him, his suit was all wrinkled and his hair was like Einstein, and it was authentic.
I hope that it goes back to that, because that is that authentic piece of Bernie Sanders. I get it too. When you're trying to run for president, you probably need to iron a suit or get something dry cleaned. But I appreciate the fact that he's not that guy.
Yeah.
So I liked it. I think it was really beautiful.
Yeah. Overall, last question I got for you, because I woke up feeling good today, and I hope the country is, and by the fact that, as you pointed out, 66% approval rating, which Trump never came anywhere near. I think the country is maybe starting to feel that way as well.
I think so too, and I hope that. One of the things that's sort of starting to happen with the QAnon people and the right-wing folks is they're coming to realize that they were misled, that they were lied to. There are a lot of messages online about people, realizing that and feeling like an idiot. And I don't want them to necessarily feel like we are not receptive to, bringing them into a movement of common sense and science and those sorts of things. What I said is that, just apologize and say you were wrong, and welcome to the movement.
Yep, we've all been wrong. We just admit it and we move on. You can be wrong and you're forgiven. Just say, hey, oops. I'm ready to come back. But there's got to be some sanity along with that. But here's the good thing. As I said yesterday, I actually saw a guy scraping the Trump sticker off his bumper. I'm not sure the message yet, if that's a, hey, we're going to come back and oops, kind of thing, or we're going deeper underground to plot. I'm not sure yet, but for me, overall, good stuff so far. But Sarah, I appreciate the time, the work that you do. Hope folks will check it out at rawstory.com. Sarah Burris is one of the fabulous folks over there. And again, I appreciate the time, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have an awesome weekend.
You as well. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1973. That was the day oil, chemical, and atomic workers struck Shell Oil over health and safety issues. OCAW had been involved in lobbying for the passage of OSHA and other environmentally related acts. Their members worked in some of the most dangerous, most toxic industries in the country. By 1972, they demanded contract language for health and safety committees on the job. The oil company countered with accusations that improved safety proved too expensive and that OCAW used the issue to assert union control over the production process. The other oil companies eventually settled in OCAW's favor, but Shell would not budge. And so, the OCAW called a strike at 8 facilities and a boycott of all Shell products. They also successfully enlisted the support of environmental organizations by stressing toxic chemical exposure and hazards faced by workers and the public alike. Picket lines were solid and thousands honored the boycott. Sales for Shell fell by 25%. After 4 months, the strike fund was nearly drained. Shell exploited internal divisions among members at a Texas plant and negotiated a separate settlement. What health and safety language Shell did agree to was non-binding. The union was broke, and the strike ended in compromise in early June. Despite this, as historian Robert Gordon notes, OCAW was able to gain strong health and safety language at all other oil companies for the first time, heightened public awareness of health hazards confronting millions of workers, and pressured OSHA into adopting stricter standards. Perhaps more importantly, the strike solidified the tentative Labor Environmental Alliance. Having merged with the United Steelworkers, the union continues to secure safe working conditions through contracts and alliances today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, on day 2 AT, one of the really good things about Trump being gone is billionaire Betsy's gone too. And maybe we get an education secretary who's actually going to, put some value in public education and push back against the division of our education system and pursuing all of these gimmicks and these profit motives. And for me, cyber charters are right up there with some of the biggest gimmicks. And fortunately, I think so many people going through this pandemic, having their kids on these platforms, trying to do the best of what we can. I think some of the major flaws of the system are becoming apparent to everybody, and I'm hoping on the other side we do something to rein the waste, fraud, and abuse back in. And here to share some thoughts on how do we fight back against the rise of these cyber charters, and also in the age of pandemic with budgets about to crash, how are we going to fund our public schools? And here to share some thoughts, I've asked Susan Spicka to come talk with us. She's the Executive Director of Education Voters of Pennsylvania. Susan, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to come on, Rick.
So, I got to tell you, I was never a big online, school fan, never a big cyber charter guy. Now that I've had to have my kids doing this for the last year, almost now, I really don't like it.
Right. I think families are getting kind of like a firsthand look into the amount of time that parents need to spend with students when they are learning at home on a computer. there's no magic bullet, right? So like cyber charter schools can have bells and whistles. They can give you a computer. They can have any learning platform that money can buy. But ultimately, teaching and learning is about relationships between students and teachers, and between students and their people in their schools, their other school staff members, between students, so building relationships. And it's also about accountability. And I think a lot of parents have come to understand that when there is a teacher in a classroom, that teacher is holding students accountable for doing their work. And I think elementary school teachers, to me, are like probably the most underpaid people who have the most important jobs that exist in our nation, because they take all these little kids who are bundles of energy, who maybe don't want to sit down and do their work, and they can, in very kind and nice ways, get them from the beginning of a school year, where maybe they're in kindergarten, they don't even know a letter, to by the end of the year they're reading. And it's because they're in the room, they're holding them accountable, and they're building relationships, making kids feel good, and that's what education is about. And I think, you try to do that over a computer, and it works for a very small number of kids, but for most kids it just doesn't work.
No, and it's what I've said all along. The homeschooling thing and the cyber charter thing work if you have really motivated parents who are going to stay on top of it. And look, there are some people who do it really, really, really well, and I give them credit for being able to do it. The vast majority of people, they've got to go to work. They've got 1,000 other things that have to be done. And while yes, they think their kids' education is extremely important, the day-to-day life catches up, and you fall behind, and we end up doing basically what we're trying to do now, just to hold on.
Right, and I think I give parents so much credit for doing what we have to do right now with all this remote learning from school districts, and I think I can speak from experience. My daughter's teachers have been extraordinary in figuring out how to take what they used to do in a classroom and shift it to being online. So, I mean, it's fine. I think it's okay to patch kids through with this for a short period of time for an emergency. But I think families that have gotten a taste of this are going to probably be really, really happy when this does not have to be the way of life for their kids. And the other thing I think people are going to realize is that, when kids get back to regular school and we're back in, and teachers can kind of assess what students have learned, we're going to find some learning loss just because of the pandemic. And we're going to find it in traditional public schools. But that type of learning loss occurs constantly for students who are enrolled in cyber charter schools, because their families have chosen to enroll them in cyber charter schools. Kids go in cyber charter schools, and again, there's like a small group of students who thrive, but the vast majority of them just fall further and further and further behind. And I think we can all understand that, because it's really, really hard to keep up with all this kind of work when you've got a kid and a screen, no matter how good your teacher is on the other end.
No, you're absolutely right. And I remember thinking, as you were talking, I'm thinking back, several years. It's probably been about 10 years. They were called the Frontier Virtual Cyber Charter out of Philadelphia. And I remember at the time going, how is it that 52 parents signed their kids up for this virtual cyber charter school, and never got the laptops that they were supposed to get, never got the internet access, never got the printers and scanners and all of the things that you're supposed to get to ensure that the student is able to participate. How they allowed that to not happen, and how this company that was administering this got away with it for as long as they did was just beyond me. And now I'm seeing how easy it can be to let days, weeks, months get away from you, and now I kind of have a different appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I think when our kids get back into school, our teachers will get our kids caught back up. There's going to be some remediation. They will come together. They will figure it out. Our kids will be fine. But kids who spend year after year after year in cyber charter school, the vast majority of them just fall further behind. And, a significant number of them never even graduate from high school. So they leave a traditional public school, they go to a cyber charter school, and then they just disappear. That is not good for those kids, and that is not good for Pennsylvania.
No, you're right. But here's the thing: you said the kids are going to be fine. I got to question that, because I'm thinking this last year, I think, most kids will probably be fine, kids of means. And I think my kids are going to be okay. I think they're going to fall back a little bit, but I think, they're able, I think they're in a position where, we can help them move and move, get what they need. I fear that so many of the kids who, maybe come from disadvantaged backgrounds, single parent homes where one of the parents always working, I fear that they've just lost this year. And I worry that, some of the studies that I've read over the years that, if you lose a kid by third grade, you never get them back. So I'm worried about those kids who maybe we don't get back.
Well, we just got the second round of federal aid that will be allocated to school districts. Pennsylvania got $2.2 billion, and all of that is going to go out through the Title I formula. So it will be it's designated to go to the schools that educate the students who have the highest needs, the students who are living in poverty. And so I think the hope is that this funding is enough that it will kind of cover the costs of what school districts have had to cope with this year, their increased costs that are COVID related. Hopefully it will help cover the cost of the lost local revenue. And then we're going to have to count on our school leaders and kind of hopefully hold them accountable for looking at the student learning loss and finding ways to help students get that back. And I think that if we get another federal aid package like President Biden has proposed, I think that, school districts in Pennsylvania are good, and they will work very, very hard to get kids who have lost a lot this year, get them caught back up.
You brought up the President Biden and obviously the new administration. Do you have any thoughts on the incoming Secretary of Education?
I think we should all just be thrilled and feel really optimistic that we are going to now have a federal government that is going to be focused not on how to take as much money as possible out of our public schools, but instead a Secretary of Education who cares about kids, who cares about diversity, who understands equity, and who will be focused on ensuring, that kids, especially vulnerable kids, get the resources that they need. So I think it's really exciting. It's been a long 4 years.
It most certainly has been that. But, this coming summer, I'm expecting a huge battle here in Harrisburg over, obviously, a state budget with a state that's seen diminished revenues coming in because of the virus. As you've said, there's some money coming in from the federal government. But I see the Republicans pushing to slash state contributions to education, and that being a battle. What are you seeing as possible?
So I think that Republicans learned the lesson when Tom Corbett was a one-term governor that Pennsylvanians love their public schools, and that voting to slash funding from the public school systems that they represent is not something that their constituents are going to accept. So I actually feel fairly confident that we're not going to see cuts in state funding. And I have to say, Governor Wolf has been very focused on ensuring that, he's doing his best with the legislature he has to work with to ensure that we start to turn around Pennsylvania's school funding system. And I think that he cares deeply about equity. And I would be I'm very confident that he will make a proposal to try to get more funding into the school districts that have the fewest resources for students. So I actually expect Governor Wolf to put forth a pretty robust proposal for school funding that will actually increase state funding this year. And then the legislature is going to have to make some decisions about their priorities. Governor Wolf's priority is in making sure kids have what they need. And if the legislature doesn't want to do that, then they're going to have to make some decisions about, what they're willing to cut.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's an increase because, look, as we've been talking about, there's going to be a remediation process that's going to happen to get people up to speed. Because the fear is that, and I worry about this with my kids because I've got my youngest daughter just entered 6th grade. My son just entered 9th grade. This is the first year in their new buildings. My fear is that they've fallen backwards, and as they progress into their years, that they don't catch up, and that their opportunities, to advance, aren't as good as they would have been otherwise. And so I'm thinking in ways of, how do we do mass remediation? Do we expand the school year? Do we expand the days? Do we add extra time? I'm all my mind is spinning in all these directions. How do you see the process going forward of getting people caught up, or do you just think the natural course of the next couple of years, people will just naturally catch up?
I think that each school district is going to be really different, and I think each superintendent knows his administrative team, and they know their teachers, and they know their community. And so there probably will be some schools that have extended learning, so they might have students that are most at risk coming back early, or extended school days. I think there are students who have special education needs who are going to need serious remediation, and I think that could be, that could happen through more intensive services for students. But, in Pennsylvania with 500 school districts, I think it's going to look different in every single school district.
No, you're right. Because, I remember, and maybe you can tell me what happened to this, but there was a piece of legislation, and I forget who it was that was proposing it. I know it was one of the Republican representatives. I just don't remember his name, who proposed the idea of allowing parents to hold their kids back a year. And it wasn't because he cared about education. It was because, they had kids who were seniors who were basically going to miss their senior year so that they could go back and play football or basketball or whatever they wanted to do. And I don't know if that ever passed, but is there a possibility of going, you know what, I'm just not comfortable with my kid missing this year. We do want to hold them back, or is that not something that would be something you'd suggest?
I think that's probably actually a proposal that's on the table in Harrisburg, and I think that's a discussion that the state's going to have. That obviously creates a lot of new costs for school districts. So I would hope that if the state legislature, approves a plan where parents could have their kids repeat a year, that they would acknowledge that there would be huge costs for school districts to have, basically adding a grade onto their schools, and ensure that schools have adequate funding to meet the students' needs.
Yeah. See, for me, this is the reason I bring this up is, my thought is this is a good time for some radical change. Out of this crisis, we can have, some pretty, bold ideas if we're willing to move forward with them. I think 12 years isn't enough. I think at some point we need to start talking about how do we get kids into getting maybe associate's degrees or into technical colleges so that they get skills that take them on beyond what a 12-year high school degree is going to get them. And this would be a perfect time to say, you know what, we're gonna transition to a 14-year plan to move people who want to go college prep to take those early your core classes. If you want to go into a VOTEC course to where you get some specialized training, it seems like this would be that right time in my view.
Yeah, no, it would be the right time, and I also think it would be the right time to really invest in career and technical education for students who maybe if they want to spend an extra year, maybe they can take that time and they felt like they couldn't fit in doing some career and technical education, but if they've got an extra year and they know they've got it, then they could actually have a little bit more time to explore what they might want to do before they leave school so that they have a better sense of what it is that they want to, do for the rest of their lives that would be satisfying and fulfilling for them. So, I hadn't thought about that, but, I think there's a lot of wisdom in looking at it that way.
No, because I just think there's an opportunity to expand and make sure that that people get something out of this beyond what our generation or my generation anyway, got out of our high school years. We could go and get a job and be fairly functional. In today's high tech world where the jobs are much more specialized than they were when I was younger, I think we need that additional training and help. So last question I've got for you, because obviously the battle is going to be political and it's going to be, in Harrisburg and in Washington to some extent. What are you suggesting people do?
So I think that we need to keep an eye on lawmakers and know who your lawmaker is and know what your lawmaker is doing for schools. And the top priority for Pennsylvania this year has got to be cyber charter school funding reform, because these schools are drowning in money. The cyber charter schools have more, they got federal aid, along with the CARES Act. Some of them took out PPP loans. They saw no decrease in their revenue from school districts. They don't get property taxes that bottomed out because of the economic downturn. They have so much money that they can't spend it, and it is just becoming one cyber charter school, we just learned, spent $1,000 per student on advertising. Another cyber charter school just bought a 106,000 square foot building. For what? I don't know, because it's a cyber charter school. I mean, these schools, it is too much for lawmakers to ignore that our tax dollars are being taken away from kids in classrooms who desperately need them and just being poured into cyber charter schools where, I mean, the waste, fraud, and abuse is massive, and half of Pennsylvania's cyber charter schools have never been audited by the state. So we don't even know what happens to these billions of dollars because the state hasn't bothered to audit them. So I think telling your state lawmaker, we need cyber charter funding reform and accountability, it has got to be at the top of the list, because we can't afford to just waste all of this education money in these schools any longer.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you. And also make sure you check out voterspa.org. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at that and see the great work that Susan and her organization does. Susan, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good talking with you, Susan Spicka, Executive Director of Education Voters PA. Make sure you check out their website. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear.
Green News Report special coverage. Democratic President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris take office, renewing hope for meaningful U.S. climate action.
All of that hope and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Stop the shouting and lower the temperature.
I don't think he was talking about climate there, but it sounds like a good plan anyway. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, after 4 long, horrible, treacherous, dangerous years, we finally have a new president in the White House and maybe some hope for climate action? Really?
Yep, maybe some hope for climate action. Donald Trump is gone from the White House, but he did do plenty of damage over that hellishly long 4-year term, damage that new Democratic President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris moved swiftly to begin repairing in their first hours after the inauguration on Wednesday. In his inaugural address, President Biden called for Americans to unite to solve the nation's 4 major simultaneous crises: the COVID-19 pandemic, the ailing economy, racial injustice, and
a climate in crisis. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. We will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era.
After the ceremonies were over, Biden went to work, signing a host of environment-related executive orders and actions, with more to be issued in coming days and weeks. The actions amount to a stark rebuke of Trump's destructive approach to the environment and energy that increased deadly water and air pollution, dismantled U.S. climate policy, and decimated federal environmental standards and enforcement, all to primarily benefit polluting industries.
Primarily? I would say solely. Who the hell else was it supposed to benefit?
Biden's immediate orders on Wednesday included rescinding the permit for the controversial Keystone XL tar sands pipeline from Canada.
Excellent.
A temporary moratorium on oil and gas leasing in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge that Trump recently opened up to development.
Also excellent.
And a big one internationally, beginning the process of rejoining the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement, which commits the U.S. to cutting its greenhouse gas emissions. That process will take 30 days. But as environmental journalist David Roberts notes, the pledge to rejoin the Paris Agreement is really better thought of as a pledge to enact domestic carbon policy to meet the U.S. commitment.
Yeah, exactly.
And to that end, Biden will issue more climate-related directives in coming weeks. Some of them could take years to be implemented, requiring action from Congress or the lengthy federal agency rules process. The list includes a sweeping order for for federal agencies to review more than 100 public health and environmental standards that Trump eliminated or weakened, like restricting science in federal assessments, allowing logging roads to be built in Alaska's Tongass National Forest. Biden plans to restore standards for vehicle fuel economy and tailpipe emissions, standards for methane emissions for oil and gas drilling, and money-saving energy efficiency standards for appliances and buildings. He's also going to review boundaries for national monuments that were slashed by the Trump administration, like the Bears Ears National Monuments. Those are actions that Biden can issue on his own authority, but to achieve meaningful, durable climate action, Biden must get Congress on board to immediately pass his $1.9 trillion COVID emergency relief package, which would set the nation on the path to an economy-wide transition to clean energy and reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050.
Now, some would say, what does a COVID relief bill have to do with climate change or the environment?
It includes provisions to revive the economy with green jobs and building infrastructure, because green jobs are a great way to rebuild the economy.
Gotcha.
But Democrats have only a razor-thin majority in the House and a one-vote majority in the Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker. Republicans are already against all of it. And congressional midterm elections are less than 2 years from now in 2022. And if Republicans win either house of Congress, they can obstruct everything.
Oh, they can obstruct everything anyway. That said, they can use the reconciliation process to pass a whole bunch of this stuff in the Senate with a simple majority rather than having to defeat a filibuster. And we can get those green jobs.
Yes. So for now, Biden's inauguration marks a turning point, giving the U.S. and the world a fighting chance against climate change.
Of course, Joe Manchin will have to go along with it in the Senate, but we'll cross that coal-loving bridge when we get to it. For much more on all of this and the stories we couldn't get to, thanks to the inauguration, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So NBC4 in Washington reported that at least 20 Capitol Police officers have come down with the COVID-19, and they're blaming it on the riot. And yeah, you got to wonder. You have that many people, coming together. You wonder how many of those people then went back home and spread it even further. And I know there was talk for a moment that we had a little dip. I got to wonder if that was a super spreader event that's going to spike things again. We seem to keep doing dumb stuff, and this being just one of them. Now they say that the police officers were equipped with protective gear, but I guess when you're getting bashed with fire extinguishers and flags, it's kind of hard to worry about the mask. So as President Biden said, for the next 99 days, wear the mask. It's not that hard. Let's try and get through this and get to the other side so that we can have a reasonable summer and we can, rebuild our economy and all of that. That needs to be done. And look, there's some really great opportunities out of this administration. I know every week of the Trump administration, it was infrastructure week and we were going to rebuild stuff. Never did. Maybe this time we're going to actually get it done. So I'm excited by the possibilities that lie ahead. And I do believe Joe Biden is going to be a president for everyone. And as much as I know many of my friends on the left are screw those people, I think Biden, in his mind and in his heart, believes that truly the only way to move this country forward is that everyone comes along. And yes, there are going to be things that benefit, even the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. So there is that. Anyway, some big stuff on the horizon for the program here. We're entering our 16th year of doing this, which I thought it'd be great. Yeah, hey, let's do it for a couple of months, see how it works out. In fact, the first station that we were on said that we wouldn't keep sponsors longer than 6 months, and we'd be off the air and long forgotten in 6 months, and that was over 15 and a half years ago. So we're entering into that, heading towards our 16th anniversary. Lots of really good things, some really good gets coming up, some big name guests coming up on Saturday. Not part of our regular radio program, but on Saturday we're going to be doing a Zoom trivia night with Congressman Eric Swalwell. We've got a couple other folks who we're booking for our Trivial Pursuit night. We're going to talk about, how do we move the labor agenda? Going to do some trivia around labor, going to do some trivia around worker issues, and obviously going to have a couple of speakers like Eric Swalwell going to give his thoughts on what needs to be done to reinvigorate the labor movement so that we can raise wages, get more people with retirement security and health security, and move this country forward by closing the massive inequality gap that is really harming our nation and our ability to thrive. So looking forward to trivia night, 7 to 9 p.m. You can get it from our website, our social media, our YouTube. If you are on YouTube, you want to check out our the Rick Smith Show YouTube page. Subscribe, tune in, tune on. We'll make sure that we get good content to you. But I'm looking forward to our first trivia night, and hope that folks will participate and hear Congressman Swalwell share some thoughts and some others. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.